Hi everyone. Alrighty. No viewers. Go live with. Hi everyone. I hope you guys are doing well. Thank you for joining. And hi Rose. That worked well.
Yes, we did it.
I know. I just noticed too, they changed the screen and I'm like, oh no.
I know. And I was worried because I put do not disturb on. So I didn't know if it would pop up or not. So I was like, oh God, please let it work.
Well, welcome. Thank you so much for coming on here today. I love what you do, and our topic is super interesting. And I think that people are going to find this really interesting and well usable in everyday life. So happy.
Exactly. I'm
Yeah.
so happy to be here. Thank you so much for asking me to do this with you. I've been excited all week about it.
No problem. Okay, so I'm just going to introduce myself because I know there's some new faces here. So my name is Dr. Barb, and I'm a naturopathic doctor in Toronto, Ontario. And I primarily deal with women's hormones. I do a lot of stress management. I work a lot around inflammation. And if you've looked at my feed, I love magnesium. I talk about that mineral a lot because it's super crucial and it does so much in our body, and we'll be talking a little bit about it later today. So, Rose, why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do?
Yeah, so it's so funny because I'm from the USA. I live in the smallest state of the United States, Rhode Island.
Ah,
So I know it's so funny. And so I have an office here too where I work with people one-on-one. I'm an integrated nutrition health consultant slash coach. So I primarily work with women. I've worked with men too. My biggest expertise is weight loss. So I have worked with and helped so many people with that. So that's my top thing. And then alongside with that, I help people with improving their health or whatever health ailments they have. And I basically customize a program for them to help them heal and improve whatever's going on, from gut health to blood sugars, inflammation, heart health, and whatever's going on with
all
the
of it.
individual. Yes.
All righty. So, as you guys all know, our topic tonight is insulin resistance. And this is something that I'm seeing a lot more in my practice, and it's coming up a lot more. And it's something that we really need to be more aware of, and also kind of look at some of the symptoms that are on like early on before we each actually get diagnosed with like diabetes at the end of the road kind of thing.
Right.
So I guess what I'm going to start with is I'll give a little background on what insulin does when it's working perfectly, and then maybe you can give us a description of what insulin resistance is. So insulin, as we know, is made by our pancreas, and when we consume carbohydrates, then our beta cells in our pancreas release insulin, our blood sugar levels go up in our bloodstream, and then insulin comes in and wants to take that glucose from the blood sugar or from the bloodstream into the cell where it's actually going to produce energy for us. And so a lot of the times we say insulin acts much like a key because it needs to unlock that cell in order to get it to uptake the glucose and bring it into the cell itself, like from the bloodstream. So what happens with insulin resistance then?
Well, for one, your cells reject it and it's not able to store the glucose that is in your bloodstream. So your blood sugars start going higher and higher. And it's just really hard for your body to use that as energy and sufficiently store it into our cells, even all the way to like our intricate cells of our eyes. Like
Right.
yeah. So
So
that's basically it, right? I mean, it's in a nutshell. That's what happens. Our cells aren't able to store, and the insulin isn't able to put it in there.
Right. And so this leaves insulin in the circulation. And of course, we know that insulin is a fat storing hormone. So
Mm-hmm.
it's got to store somewhere, right? So we
Right.
have it storing in the tissue then, I guess. And the excess glucose that is in the blood is where we get high blood sugar
Right.
values. Right.
Right.
And so, how does that impact weight?
So for me, when I see my clients, basically 8 out of 10 of my clients have some type of blood sugar related, whether it's pre-diabetic or insulin resistance, or even type 1 diabetes or hypoglycemic, so many things. So with weight loss, if you're eating foods such as, more high glycemic, more high carb, that your pancreas is going to need to produce more insulin to store those blood sugars into our cells. What happens is your body quickly has to produce a lot more insulin in your body, so it is mostly stored as fat. So that's where the weight gain starts to begin. So so your body does much better when you're eating lower carbs, and your body is able to store those using the cells and into your cells. So that's what I see a lot of. It does increase more weight gain and like belly fat, lower energy. Hopefully that's answering your question. So basically the biggest thing is, yes, weight. So as soon as I help people eat, better carbs for you, that doesn't require your body to produce more insulin, then the weight loss goes down.
Okay, and what kind of carbs are we talking about? So we know that there's bread carbs, there's
Mm-hmm.
vegetable carbs, there's several there's like starchy carbs. So
Right, right.
what kind of carbs are we talking about when we want to go low glycemic?
So when it's so funny because years ago I got certified in the low glycemic diet, so I'm like a master at this. Surprisingly, even before I got certified in integrated nutrition. So what happens? What kind of foods? Okay, so basically, the more fiber in a food. Okay, so I'll give you a couple of different examples. It allows to decrease the carb amount, the amount of blood sugars that your body needs
Right.
to store. So the more fiber, I always recommend at least 4 minimum in your label. So I always educate my clients to eat more plant-based because there's a lot more fiber and protein and healthy fats, which helps to make it a lower glycemic food. So, for example, instead of eating white pasta, right, it's got about, I don't know, 41 to 43 grams of carb, and for optimal health and blood sugar maintenance, even your doctors, your registered dietitians will tell you, you should have 50 grams in one meal. So now you're eating 1 cup of pasta, which is about 43 grams, right? With very little fiber, maybe 1 or 2 grams, and 2 grams of protein. So, and that requires a lot of more insulin. So when you're eating like a whole grain plant-based pasta, like chickpea pasta or red lentil or green lentil or the banza, it's so nice to see so many options today.
Right.
There's more fiber, so it's low glycemic. So your body, when you're eating that, it just helps you digest and utilize that more as energy, and it moves a little slower. So that's the difference. High glycemic, it goes up and down quickly and it gets stored as fat. And when you're eating something that has more fiber and protein, it gives you more of a longer sustainable type way to metabolize and digest that food. So you're looking anywhere from like a half hour to 2 hours, depending on what you're eating. So then that way it's used more as energy, and you're able to burn more fat that way instead of storing fat.
Right. So do you look at, I know that some people do the net carbs. So they look at the carbohydrates and then you take off what the fiber is. So if something has 20 grams of carbohydrate, but then it has 10 grams of fiber, then we're
Right.
only looking at a net carb of around 10 grams. Do you use that?
Yes, I do. So that,
Okay.
yes, I educate them on the glycemic load or the net carb, right? So I always educate my clients, anything under 10 is low glycemic, 10 to
Right.
20 is medium,
Right.
20 or up is high. So, and it makes a difference even learning how to read labels and find those good carbohydrates, because you want to make sure that it's more nutritious too, because you want to get the whole full balance of what you need for your body. So yeah, the net carb is so important. And then you have the glycemic index. That gets a little confusing to people.
Right.
So I work with them for, the first 4 weeks, making my clients understand, because it's a lot to understand. And once they get it, it makes life so much easier and your body feels amazing. It makes such
Right.
a difference in your body.
Someone just asked, why is net carb so beneficial? Is it because it's a quick way of us kind of looking at the end result of what we're eating as far as carbohydrates are concerned? Because I know with low glycemic, there's like a list for low and a list for medium and a list
Yeah.
for high. And unless you got them memorized, it could be kind of tricky to know what you're having right
So
off the
yeah.
bat.
So the question was, say that again. What was
They
the question?
wanted to know why the net carbs were so beneficial. So like the carbohydrates with the fiber taken off. Is it just like that it's a quick way of people being able to tell that
Yes.
food is
Yes.
low glycemic kind of?
Yes. So that's the number one reason, is when people are eating a low carb, or they want to stick to a low glycemic diet, or to help with blood sugars, and optimal health of your insulin, or whatever they're dealing with, blood sugar health and weight loss too, even
Right.
heart health,
Right.
the less eating low glycemic ultimately helps you reduce the fat absorption in your body.
Right.
So yeah, so it gives more energy into your cells. I mean, we can get into like the science behind the mitochondria, push out those little fat cells in your cells. And
Right.
yeah, so the net carb is a great tool. It's a great tool. That's what it
Right.
comes down to, is helping you find better options when you're eating carbs. Right.
Right. So, and we're just going to rephrase. So the net
Oh,
carbs is
yeah.
basically taking the carbohydrates minus the fiber.
Minus the fiber. Exactly. Right.
And
That's,
then that is our net carb.
Yep, that's the net carb, right? So you take the carb gram. So you look at the carb gram, total carbohydrate. Let me I have a label. Maybe I took them away. Sorry. I have like an office here full of labels too. Because I do a lot of things online now. So I brought a lot of my office here. So yeah, you look at the total carb first, right? And then you look at the dietary fiber. Okay, I'm glad. This is a great question. And so let's say the Joseph's Pita Pockets that you can buy, like, I don't know if you have a Stop and Shop in Canada, but the Joseph's Pita Pocket, it tells you right then and there the net carb. So it's 8 grams of carb minus 4 grams of fiber. So that brings it down to a 4 net carb, right?
Right.
And there's another thing to calculate. Sugar alcohols. It wouldn't typically be in bread, but like snacky foods, granola bars, ice creams. If there's sugar alcohols in it, you can also minus that too. So that's the second thing you can minus.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then what was your, for low, it was like under 10?
Under 10, yes.
Okay. So if you're under 10, those are low glycemic foods and are probably not going to spike our insulin ridiculously, really quickly.
Very good. Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, it makes such a difference. Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
great.
That's a great tool to have.
Yeah.
So if you're insulin resistant, how would someone find a list of the foods that are bad to eat and more optimal foods as well? Well, that is one way, but we want to stay with probably, what I always tell my patients is we want to stay with a whole food, plant-based diet.
Exactly. Yeah.
Because some of the causes of insulin resistant is food itself, right? The processed foods and sugars and those types of foods that don't have any nutritional value or have so much processing in them that there's no nutritional value. And these are often drivers of insulin resistance, especially if it's on a continual basis.
Right, exactly. Yeah, you have to look at the whole package. Yeah.
Yeah,
How much sugar's in it, how much fat, saturated
right.
fat, that all, yeah, takes a big effect into that.
And what are some other causes that you're finding insulin resistance is happening? Like, do you have any, besides the food, do you like have any other areas
Life,
where,
yeah, lifestyle stress, I include that a lot into my courses. I call it the 3 M's: your mindset, your mindfulness, and movement. Lack of exercise. So let's talk about stress. So stress raises our cortisol level. So what happens when we have that elevated chronically, our body doesn't know the difference, and a way to protect ourselves, our body needs to store fat. So when your
right,
cortisol levels are extremely elevated, it's stored as fat, and so that right there messes up our hormones, right? So that and if you're not moving around too, if you're more sedentary, that impacts the way our body digests foods, because exercise acts as medicine. It helps bring down those blood sugars too, and that are in our body. So it helps um, the insulin production, the amount that our body needs, and to prevent, damaging our pancreas even more. The more it
right.
makes.
Right. And with exercising, we have special GLUT4 receptors that get activated. And so it is another additional set of receptors that get activated that are able to clear that blood, or that glucose out of the blood. So
Right, right.
it's just that extra level of help if we do some exercise. And we have a question. Can you reverse insulin resistance? You should answer that.
Me? Me? Can you reverse it? You can't stop the damage that's been done,
Yeah,
but you can prevent it from growing, right?
yeah,
So the first form, if you go to a doctor, what do they say? Let's change your diet, let's exercise, so you can lower your A1C. You can lower the blood sugars, your fasting blood sugars, and right. So yeah, you can definitely prevent it from getting worse. Right.
and it
Unfortunately,
depends too where
yeah.
you are, right? So,
Right, right.
I mean,
Depends, right.
yeah, if you're already diabetic, we can go from type 2 diabetes to not having type 2 diabetes,
Right.
but some of the damage that happens with diabetes isn't always fixable right away. So, yes, we can definitely improve the situation. And if you're in earlier stages, we can definitely reverse it.
Right. Like
Um,
my son is type 1 diabetic. We need a cure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
And
his,
insulin is an
yeah.
important hormone, right?
Oh
Like you
my
can't
goodness,
live
yes.
without it. So, I mean, it's not a bad hormone. It's just when it's not working the way it should that it becomes bad for us as far as health. Um, and yes, adding muscle is a good way to lower A1C, because again, if you're working out and you're creating muscle, you're going to activate those extra additional
Yeah.
receptors that are going to help to move that sugar out of the blood and into the cell for energy, for sure. So that is definitely a good way of doing that. Now,
Mhm.
as far as what I see in practice a lot with insulin resistance is inflammation. And so and we don't really know if inflammation causes the insulin resistance or insulin resistance causes the inflammation, and it could go both ways. But I think nowadays inflammation is a huge issue in our world, and coming from many different lifestyle factors, many different types of foods. So I find that I deal a lot with that on that end. And then once we
Right.
get some of that inflammatory processes cleared up, we can also then improve insulin resistance. But we do know that having high insulin levels does increase the inflammatory pathway. So, like, it does increase the advanced glycation end products, which are like causing oxidative stress and huge amounts of inflammation. So,
Right.
you can kind of kill two birds with one stone just by dealing with inflammation as well, which I guess would be an underlying root cause for weight loss as well, correct?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I even did a course just on the anti-inflammatory diet, and the results were, and I just tried it. Like, I normally do something else before that part, and it was phenomenal. I had a woman, her cholesterol went down 53 points in 4 weeks.
Wow.
4 sessions. Yeah. The inflammation in your body, it goes down tremendously by eating anti-inflammatory. So in weight loss, you know, I saw 10 pounds in 4 weeks, and people that weren't, you know, really in need of weight loss. One of the
Right.
girls, in fact, I'm working on helping her gain weight.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, it's so important to eat
Yeah.
anti-inflammatory, because that helps.
Right. And I mean, they've pretty well come up and said it's the underlying root cause of most of our illnesses today. So it's a big deal. How do you measure inflammation? So I usually measure it through high sensitivity CRP, sometimes the ESR. We can also measure it with symptoms just alone on that. But those are two of the biggest ones. Homocysteine is also another one that we can measure with inflammation. And then next question is, how do you eat anti-inflammatory? So what kinds of foods are we looking at in the anti-inflammatory diet?
So, there's so much science behind that, like the pH scale, acidic and alkaline, but the top anti-inflammatory foods, number one, you want to stay away from sugar, and you want like anti-inflammatory sugars.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like off the top, like raw organic maple syrup or coconut, you know, coconut sugar. Those are, you know, monk fruit, things that are non-glycemic too.
Right.
Anti-inflammatory foods, vegetables, fruit, anything that stains your countertop. Fish, less meat, like animal source, beans, nuts, seeds, a lot of things, plant-based, right? Whole foods.
What do you
Those
think
are
of
the
the
top ones.
Mediterranean diet then? Is that something that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. It's funny because like with my course, I have a little bit of everything.
okay.
I use keto bread. I'll use, you know, this stuff from Mediterranean. So I every week we add new foods that are healing and helpful, improving digestive and all that. So Mediterranean, I mean, it helps lowers triglycerides. I pretty much eat Mediterranean. I'm 100% Italian,
Yeah.
first generation here. So yeah, I grew up eating mostly Mediterranean. And it's one of the best ways. There's so many studies right behind the Mediterranean diet.
Right. And I think too, like I see a lot in practice. So if they're coming in with high insulin, they're coming in with high cholesterol.
Right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and it's because and those two markers are strongly associated. And the reason that is because when we have too much insulin in the system, then that increases the HMG-CoA reductase enzyme pathway. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what we block when we take a statin, right? So we're
Right.
blocking that enzyme from happening. But if there's high insulin and it increases that enzyme, then we're going to build up and drive up cholesterol. So this is a really common thing when we see insulin resistance. So we see high insulin, and then high cholesterol. So, and the Mediterranean diet is really great for that kind of stuff. Like it's
Right.
bringing in a lot of healthy fats and proteins, and lesser on the carbohydrates that are probably more in the medium to high glycemic. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Typically, there are usually low glycemic foods that are
Right.
Mediterranean style. I'm seeing a lot of questions. They're going fast.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to go back and see how many. Okay. So we did that one. Alkaline eating, like Dr. Sebi's list. Are you familiar with Dr. Sebi's list?
I don't think I have that. I have a few alkaline lists. Yeah. So any medical doctor advice, absolutely. I'm sure that's and you can always Google. I always tell my clients, Google it.
Yeah.
See if
Yeah.
it's alkaline or acidic. you know, or you can find out exactly where it is on the scale.
Right. What about dairy and feta cheese?
So, dairy is, I forgot if it's like slightly acidic or, but you're better off eating more, like feta or, what's the other, goat
Goat
cheese.
cheese.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love goat cheese. If I
Yeah.
could put it on everything, I love
Yeah.
it. I
And
throw it on
dairy,
my salads. Yeah.
right. And dairy is just more inflammatory as well.
Right. It
So
is. Right.
if we've already got an underlying inflammation issue happening, we don't kind of want to be adding to that in, additional level.
Right.
So
Right.
probably not the best thing to have is,
Right. Dairy. Right. Yeah. I think it's, definitely on the acidic side. Right. But
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I've been drinking organic, no sugar juices, melon, beet, and turmeric. Are there natural sugars that could have spiked my A1C? So I guess he's got an oat, and that could be because there's a lot of sugar in juices that are
Right.
because when we're juicing, we're taking out all the fiber and the nutrients and
Right.
all that, right? So
Right.
um, definitely,
Yeah.
I would say yes.
Yeah, sugar is, you know, like juice. Like if my son's low, that's the first thing I put in his mouth because what it does is it
Yeah.
spikes up your sugar. So I try to, you know, recommend if you're gonna have fruit, like have a whole fruit and then put, you know, have some almonds with it or nut butter, some kind of fat or protein or more fiber, and it'll help
Right.
slow that, you know, glucose response.
Right, right. So, and beets are very sugary to begin with. So, if you're
Hmm.
going to juice a beet, you're probably going to get quite a high sugar content.
Yeah.
So, we want to try to, consume our fruits and vegetables in
Hmm.
as whole processed as we can instead of juicing them because that is the drawback with juicing.
Yeah.
So definitely that might be why that has spiked your A1C.
Also, one thing, Dr.
Yeah.
Weber, Dr. I'm sorry, I always mispronounce it.
Woger.
Warger. I got it. Warger. Okay. One thing about fruit too, like they're monstrous sometimes in a grocery store. So you want to focus on getting like the smaller bananas, not that they're this long,
Yeah.
a smaller fruit because sometimes it's double the amount of carbs. You know, instead of 15 grams, you're looking at 30, 40. That's
Right.
really, really high. So,
Right. Right. And like you said, matching it or putting it with a protein or a fat
hmm.
is going to offset some of that insulin response because it's not obviously going to be just the carbohydrate coming into
Right. Yeah. Hmm.
um, why beans and not seeds? I'm sensitive to beans, but have no issues with seeds like quinoa. Did we say no seeds?
No, I
No.
didn't say that. No, chia seeds, flax seeds, they're anti-inflammatory. Yeah.
Yeah.
Some people might have a little bit of irritation, irritable when they eat beans. Even people that don't eat beans, it depends on the person, you know, what they're dealing with, if they have IBS or, you know, colitis, Crohn's, whatever they're dealing with. Even myself, I don't have a medical term, and you know, it does produce a little gas, but they're
Right.
good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. So seeds like chia seeds, flax seeds, these are all good fats and
Hmm.
healthy sources of protein as well. Uh,
Right.
so definitely I would be adding those in to reduce some of that carbohydrate um, like in that food.
Yeah, and the net carb on those are like one or two for a serving. It's so low.
Right. So very low, right?
Mm. Oh my goodness, yeah.
Next question. Seems plant-based is ideal. What if you still consume meat and fish? Will this hinder or is it detrimental to insulin and inflammation?
Hmm.
I would,
Um.
I mean, fish, I think it depends on the type of fish, but
Mhm.
definitely fatty fish is very anti-inflammatory. So it definitely would not contribute to inflammation. It would probably help inflammation.
Mhm.
And then with meats, I would really strongly probably suggest red meat is out. I mean, it's very acidic, it's very inflammatory. And then, of course, chicken and turkey. I mean, it's if you don't eat it all the time and you do have it, I don't see a problem with it. I think it's a healthy source of protein.
Mhm.
Um, if it's clean, we want to make sure that it's organic because there
Right.
are a lot of hormones and a lot of antibiotics used with these animals. And of
Right.
course, that's going to end up in your system if you you know, you eat these things. So
Right.
I don't believe that those types of meats are detrimental unless we're over consuming.
Right.
Unless
And
you have
I
something
have
different.
people, yeah, I have people that do plant-based and they do, you know, one meal with meat. You know, not meat, when I say meat, like fish, maybe
Right.
chicken a couple times a week, eggs, you know, things that are less acidic and affect the inflammation.
Right.
So yeah, so people do plant-based with a little bit of meat and fish, mostly
Right.
fish. Yeah.
Right. Right. Okay. Does apple cider vinegar with the mother help?
I mean, people do it. Um, I, you know, I haven't looked at clinical studies or anything, but you know, apple cider, there's so many things you can do to help, like cinnamon. Some people take cinnamon tablets, or put cinnamon in their food. So I think it wouldn't hurt. I mean, maybe too much of it would cause acid. So, you know, in moderation again, like everybody's different, so it's hard to say. Depending, you have to look at the person as a whole. So it's hard to say exactly, but people do use that to help lower issues with blood sugars and insulin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always caution people on the apple cider vinegar because I feel like it's got with stomach acid, and if they don't know if they have low or high stomach acid, they could be
Right.
either contributing to the problem or making the problem worse. So I always kind of caution on apple cider vinegar unless we really know that there is an actual issue. So kind of
Yeah. Right.
got to be careful.
Right.
What should be attacked first, inflammation or insulin resistance? I think probably both, right? I mean, like we said, we could probably kill two birds with one stone when we're
hmm
dealing with insulin resistance versus inflammation.
Right. Yeah. Um, yeah, it depends. Like it depends on their A1C too. Sometimes you just want to maybe work on that quick, you know, learn how to eat to help your insulin resistance and then add on, you know, the anti-inflammatory.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay. Next, not sure if you've already covered this, but do you agree with the theory that insulin resistance originates from fatty liver? I have seen a lot of people with fatty liver and insulin resistance, but I think from what I look when I did my research on this is the insulin resistance is what
hmm
creates the fatty liver because it contributes to the fatty liver because it impairs the breakdown of fats. And so it sends all these free fatty acids to the liver. And of course, it's now stored there. So I think it probably has something to do with insulin resistance. And then, of course, it causes fatty liver. Do you know, have you seen anything different or?
Um, well, you know, it's funny that you say that. Years ago when I first got certified in the it was a weight loss course that I taught. It was based on low glycemic eating. And there was a gentleman that had a fatty liver. And then at the end of my course, it was a 12-week course. And his toxicity, his liver, like whatever, I can't really remember, it improved significantly. You know, so um, I think it has something, like you said, like how you explained it. I think so, yes. I think
Okay.
it definitely helps with that.
Well, I know that one of the questions that was asked yesterday in the question box was what kind of testing is available to test for insulin resistance. And I know when I do testing in practice, I look at ALT, which is the liver enzyme. And
hmm
the reason I look at that is because of the whole fatty liver issue. So that enzyme will be increased if in fact you have some form of fatty liver. I mean, there's other reasons why it can be increased as well, but
hmm
that seems to be like the connection there. Um, and while we're on it, do you do testing for insulin resistance or do they usually come in and have those tests already?
Yeah, usually I can't do any of those testings. Like for me, I'm just a health coach, health consultant, so I can't prescribe, diagnose, or do any of that. So a lot of times they're referred by their doctors, you know. So they've already done that. So they already know coming in. Or if I see something, you know, I might say, you know, you might want to talk to your doctor and have this checked, you know. But no, yeah, I don't do any. The only thing I can test is do the litmus paper on the tongue to
Right,
see if
right,
they're acidic or alkaline.
right. Okay, so let's go over quickly then, because that was a question on how we could test insulin resistance. So what I do in practice, I look at HbA1c,
Hmm.
obviously, our hemoglobin A1c, and that's basically telling us what the red blood cell is doing in the last 90 days,
Right,
and what kind of, you know, how much sugar is attached to that cell. I also look at fasting blood glucose, and then I also sometimes do oral glucose, the tolerance test. And this is where you have to drink that really sugary drink, and then they
yeah,
measure your insulin response over the course of an hour and a half to 2 hours,
right.
sometimes even 3 hours, depending upon where you go.
Hmm.
I usually do a cholesterol panel because we know with insulin resistance, we have high cholesterol. And then I also look at inflammation markers. So I look at high sensitivity CRP. I also look at fasting insulin, and then I look at homocysteine. And so if I see all of those kind of elevated or out of range, I have a pretty good idea that that
Hmm.
person has insulin resistance. And so those are some of the tests that you can ask for from your physicians,
Hmm.
and to see if you do in fact have insulin resistance. Um, Ag Silver, I believe it. Medical Medium is a great source of info. I don't know what Ag Silver is.
Yeah, I don't either. There's a lot
What
of
does
information out there.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what Ag Silver is. What does it mean if someone has high triglycerides?
So it's your main storage of fat.
Yeah.
So you, yeah, so that's basically it. Right? So you have high
Yeah. So
fat
so
storage.
what's happening in your cholesterol panel is that in the lipid manufacturing, you're making more triglycerides or more fatty lipids than somebody who may have a lower set of triglycerides. And of course, they are the ones that have a lot of the damaging effects. So
Right.
LDL, although we say it's bad, we really need to look at particle size to really get LDL in, whether it's good or bad. But triglycerides, they're usually not good and not recommended to be high. So, yeah.
Right, right. And the Mediterranean diet is one of the number one ways to lower that too. And
Right,
low
right.
glycemic, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we have another apple cider vinegar question,
Yeah.
just that helps. So we've answered that. Fermenting beans helps with digestion. I like soaking beans as well. I
Yeah.
find if we soak beans, then we don't get so much of that phytic acid, and then of course you don't get as much gas.
Hmm.
How does insulin resistance affect the menstrual cycle?
That I don't know the answer to.
Okay.
You might be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not, yeah. So you know,
So
you're
insulin
the medical
resistance,
expert.
yeah, insulin resistance can affect the menstrual cycle in a few different ways. So it can also cause some of the PMS that we see in the the menstrual like time frame, the 2 weeks before
Hmm.
or the 2 weeks after, depending upon what type of PMS you have. But we also see it with hormonal acne. We see
Right. That I
it
know.
with, so we can have, if we're insulin resistant or we have a lot of insulin in the system, we can have shorter cycles. We can have in between bleeds. We can
Hmm.
have longer bleed cycles. So it really depends. And again, because insulin resistance is with the inflammation, we get that as part of the picture as well.
Right.
So we can have a lot more painful periods. We can have estrogen that's way too high, and it's not, getting out of our system properly. So it's really individual, but those are kind of like the overall things that can happen if insulin is not in check when we have a cycle. Um,
Right.
what if
Funny,
our, oh,
funny
sorry.
thing is, I just want to mention, when my son was diagnosed, he was about 16 years old, and I know he doesn't get his menstrual cycle, but the thing is, like, I knew about acne, how it affects that. He was so full of acne because
Right.
his sugars, he was still in the honeymoon stage, and he still had insulin cells, but he was probably in the insulin resistance stage, and
Right.
he had, you know, his hormones were messed up, and the acne and all that. You get tired and all that kind of stuff. So even for men, they experience stuff like that too. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like I think the acne part is probably a big insulin
Yeah.
factor, as well as inflammation. So
Right.
definitely something to look at. What if your doctor has diagnosed you as severely anemic and told you to eat red meat?
Well, um,
You
you know,
can,
I'm not a doctor, so like for me, if somebody came to me with that, if they're low, there's supplements you can take, but you have to be careful with that too, because it can bind you up. And if you're gonna eat red meat, what I recommend is you want like a good quality. You can get, you know, organic grass fed that has, you know, better nutrients in it because a lot of things are depleted. So I give my list, actually, I give my clients a list of all the different types of label lingo so you can find better meats and all
right,
that. So yeah, so you
right.
get more iron with grass-fed and organic red meat. So I always, for that, you know, once a week, you know, so
Yeah. Yeah. And remember, we can get iron from some of our vegetables as well,
yes,
right?
that's right.
So
Yep.
it's not just meats that we can get our
Hmm.
irons for. So there's also iron in lentils, there's iron in
Right.
spinach. So these are things that you have to keep in check when you are like obviously anemic. And,
Hmm.
and of course, if you are anemic, you are likely doing some form of iron supplementation
Right.
in order to help that. So yeah, you can definitely make better choices. And there's the question below that is also combating anemia in plant-based diets. And then the question below that is considering grass-fed beef. So it's
Right.
definitely making better choices when selecting those types of proteins.
Hmm.
Thanks for addressing my questions. Those tests Dr. B just recommended that we ask for our doctor, what were they? Cholesterol and, oh, so they were, okay, so cholesterol, hemoglobin, A1C, fasting glucose, or you could do the oral glucose tolerance test, fasting insulin, the ALT, which is the liver enzyme, and then homocysteine. So those are, and not, they're not going to run them all, but they'll run a few of those. And then if they have to, they will run some of the backup tests to kind of give that confirmation. Would having no gallbladder increase the risk for insulin resistance since the liver is overworked? I would say no.
No, yeah, I don't
No.
think so.
No, because we're not, it's our insulin resistance is really, insulin is being produced by the pancreas. It's responding to the foods that we're eating. And depending upon how high it goes, it's not, you know, it's going to the liver. If in fact we have the fatty liver issue,
Hmm.
then the liver becomes overworked because we have all this extra fatty acids that are being deposited there. But I don't believe that it has anything to do with insulin resistance. So, okay, so I think that's it for questions. So we can kind of move forward.
Yeah.
See what's next on our thing. Okay, so why don't we talk about some ways, lifestyle factors. So we've talked about the food.
Hmm.
Um, what other lifestyle factors can we do to decrease or help with insulin resistance?
Well, the number one thing is exercise, because that will definitely help lower the blood sugars in your bloodstream, access medication. Um, and so better diet, like we talked about, and maybe doing some learning how to do deep belly breaths to help reduce stress, meditation. Some I like what I use to help myself reduce stress. I do take a supplement. So there's supplements out there that can help. I love ashwagandha.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good stuff.
Yeah, reducing stress, exercise, your lifestyle, your mindset. Those are like the top ones. I'm just trying to think. Lifestyle, you said lifestyle, right?
Yeah. So one thing I always
Mm-hmm.
really harp on with my patients, and I think they know me as soon as I start talking about that, is sleep. Because I
Yes.
find like sleep is so super important.
Mm-hmm.
And if we have a lack of sleep, then we got more cortisol out there, and
Mm-hmm.
then insulin isn't going to work as well because cortisol is going to take over and
Mm-hmm.
it's going to be harder for insulin to do its job. But what was really interesting was a study I read about a lack of sleep. So if we had a lack of sleep for more than 2 nights in a row, so let's say we were not sleeping through the night, or we were not sleeping our 7 to 9 hours, we can end up having the blood work of a type 2 diabetic. So insulin resistance of a type 2 diabetic. And that's just from sleep alone.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sleep is super, super important. Do not skip out on sleep.
Yeah,
And it's one of
exactly.
the ways you can actually help your insulin
Mm-hmm.
levels be better. Because if
Yeah.
we're not getting enough sleep, we're also going to have hunger hormones that are not balanced. So they're not going to be working properly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, so definitely I think sleep is a number one. What do you think of intermittent fasting for insulin resistance?
Before I answer that, you know what? The one thing I noticed improvement right away with my clients is sleep.
Right,
Eating low glycemic, because that's like the first section that I use in the beginning when I help people. Their sleep improves just by eating better. So
right.
yes, that will. Intermittent fasting. So that's a good question. So I just started intermittent fasting. So I was like, so what I help my clients is teach them how to not diet.
Right,
But
right.
intermittent fasting is amazing. So um so for type 1, I don't think I don't recommend that, but type 2 insulin resistance, it's great because so this is my own experience because this is the first time doing it. I feel phenomenal, and the science behind it to help your cells rejuvenate, and help with the blood sugars, the insulin resistance. I think it's a really good tool to use.
Yeah,
But you should be eating healthy while
yeah.
you have your window of whatever
Right.
you're doing. I'm doing the 16-hour
Right. So the 16-8
fasting.
is very, very popular. And you're right.
Yeah.
It's a really important thing to note because some people think they can just fast for 16 hours and then eat junk for the 8-hour window. And that's really not going to solve any problems.
Hmm.
So we definitely want to be eating healthy, whole meals. And it's not a
Yes.
caloric restriction. It's just you're shortening that eating window. You're
Hmm.
not shortening your calories. You're not reducing your calories. So yeah, I use intermittent fasting a lot. I
Hmm.
like to switch it up between morning and night because remember, insulin is most sensitive in the morning. It's least sensitive at night.
Hmm.
So I like to switch it up in plans for patients. And I just find when we can give our bodies a break
Yeah.
and not have this consistent eating all the
Hmm.
time, because every time we put food in our mouth, insulin is spiking. Like this is what
Yeah.
happens, right? Right? We
Right.
have to have insulin come out every time we eat. If we
Hmm.
eat 6 times a day, I mean, by the sixth time, it's probably not even going to respond properly anymore because it's worn out.
Right.
So I mean, I use it a lot and I do like it as well. So definitely,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. So it's new to me. As far as using it, I haven't. I'm doing a small group right now with some of my clients, and so far so good. Everybody is really enjoying. It's very super easy. You think it's
yeah,
hard, but it's really not. Especially
yeah,
the 16.
yeah,
And I'm not as hungry. I
right,
feel fuller and satisfied.
yeah,
So it's probably helping that, your cells to open up and
right,
use your insulin better. But the science behind it's amazing. Just
yeah,
giving your cells that rest in your digestive tract. It just helps improve your metabolism, so you get more
yeah,
energy, you sleep better. So yeah, I think it's a great tool. Somebody asked if it is ashwagandha.
yeah,
Yes, and you spelled it correctly, but sometimes I see a DHA at the
yeah,
end.
yeah,
Yeah, I think it's DHA, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, that's correct.
yeah.
Yeah,
It's
so
an
intermittent
adaptogen.
fasting is great.
Perfect. So before we get off, the other question I got was, what supplements can support healing from insulin resistance? So I don't know if you use many supplements with your patients, but I know that I sometimes do, alongside diet and lifestyle factors. So my most common ones are, usually I do a probiotic because that decreases blood sugar, because it decreases inflammation, and it prevents like the destruction of the pancreatic cells in the, like from the insulin. So I usually always do a probiotic. I love berberine for insulin resistance.
Right.
This is a herb that really enhances insulin sensitivity, enhances sugar uptake, and it takes it and it just helps lower blood sugar. And berberine is really good, but you got to be careful because you should be under the care of a healthcare professional. You can't take it long time. Some people's liver enzymes go up, so it has to be monitored, but it works fantastic and has been actually referred to as the natural metformin. So
Wow.
really super, super herb. Yeah. Vitamin D is another one that I like to use. And then there's another herb, Jebina. And so this is a herb that reduces sugar absorption in the gut and then promotes the cell's uptake of sugar from the blood. So works really well and is actually very specific for diabetics. So again, you do want to work with a healthcare provider to make sure that you're getting the right dose and
Exactly.
it's safe and effective for you, because I don't know what medications you're on. So some of these, supplements interact. And then finally, of course, magnesium. And the reason I like magnesium is because it, the insulin receptors depend on magnesium. So if we're magnesium deficient, we are not getting the best capability of that insulin receptor. And plus, if we're insulin resistant, the kidney expels magnesium out of our system. So if we're insulin resistant, we're magnesium deficient. And if we're magnesium deficient, we may be insulin deficient. So it's that vicious cycle again. So, but those are kind of the supplements that I like to use for insulin resistance. But again, working with a healthcare provider is really, really important.
Right. You always have to check with your doctor or your pharmacist. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The one thing that I just want to mention too, because we had a lot of questions. What I notice is with my clients, like you said, most have like cholesterol or, it's correlated, once they have insulin. So what I'm noticing is, you're at risk for like a cluster disease, when you have insulin resistance or diabetes, they're at risk for, thyroid or, what's the other one? Oh my goodness, I'm blank right now. Heart health, heart disease.
Cardiovascular, yeah.
Cardiovascular. Oh, and celiac.
Right.
Celiac too.
Yeah.
So it's funny because like people that have celiac, right, are at risk for blood sugar issues, insulin resistance, diabetes.
Right.
So yeah, that's another thing, again, because of chronic inflammation, chronic illness, you're at risk for others to develop. So it's really important to, try to decrease this, with what we recommended and stuff like that. So I just wanted to point that out. So,
so let me just do a quick recap, and then we can go into where they can find you and what you have to offer. I know you have something special. So just to recap, so we spoke about basically insulin resistance is just insulin not taking the glucose or the sugar out of the blood and not working properly. We also talked about lifestyle factors being super important in controlling insulin resistance. So that's sleep, stress, mindset, exercising, and of course the number one, diet, right? And we want to look at net carbs. We want to look at low glycemic when we're looking at what we want to put into our mouths. And we also want to look at an anti-inflammatory diet. We went over some tests that we could do, as well as some of the supplements that can help with insulin resistance. And so where can they find you, and what do you have going on right now?
So you can find me, you know, on Instagram for starters. So so I'm in Westerly, Rhode Island. So a lot of you are all over the country and in
Yeah,
Canada, but I do things online. I do a lot. I've been doing a lot, especially because of COVID. I've been working with people online.
right,
I do live Zoom, I do phone calls, whatever. So, but right now, starting on the 10th, I am running a free Sunderize Your Body challenge. And so far, I think I have like 22 people signed up. It's a
great,
big group. And it's a really great opportunity for people just to like get started and learn some key
right,
life-changing principles on how to eat healthy, what could be those trigger foods. So I'm going to go over like what to remove and what to replace, because I'm all about, it's not about eliminating a food group. So for somebody that has like gluten sensitivity or they have insulin resistance, I'm going to help them put in their diet what's going to help them with what's going on. And then we talk about in this challenge about repopulating your gut. So bringing in some good foods that are going to help you with any digestive issues that somebody may have, whether it's gas, bloating, heartburn. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about inflammation and how to help get started with helping you with inflammation.
right.
We're going to talk about stress. So there's so much in this challenge. It's a great opportunity just to get to know me and see what I, what my style of work is and what I offer. And you're going to learn key secrets to help you start losing some weight. So,
Great.
and I give a lot of tools. So it's a lot of fun. And it's a great opportunity. And alongside of that, I work with people. I do courses, and you can easily go to my link, and I have things that you can look up. So I'm very resourceful. I have
Great.
a lot of things I can help you with, and yeah, that's
Okay.
pretty much it, I think.
And they can go to your Instagram handle at Rose's Wellness to get the details on the free challenge, correct?
Yes, yep.
Okay,
So it's really
perfect.
quick. You just go on the bottom and you hit that link, and you can sign up for the free challenge. You can actually even sign up for a free consultation. I get on the phone with people. I'll do a Zoom conference just so I can talk to the person, find out what's going on with them.
Perfect.
Yeah, there's many ways that you can get in touch with me.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight.
Yeah.
And I
How
also
about you? I
just
want
want,
before we hang up,
yeah,
how about people in America? Because I know like you're the master behind magnesium. So I just
I
want to let my clients know, what they can do, how they can find out more about this magnificent critical mineral, that you are so resourceful on. And I love it because I learned so much from you about
yes,
magnesium.
yes. So you can get all of that on my feed at Dr. Barb Woegerer, and I am coming out with a sugar detox tomorrow. So
Yay.
yeah, you can check out my stories. I'll be promoting it there, and it's going to be a 2-week detox, and we're going to be doing it together. And every day I'll be providing different resources and different ways of trying to cut out more sugar out of our lives and replacing it with some better things. So yeah, come check that out tomorrow. And I also just published a magnesium ebook, which is available in my link on my bio. So you can certainly check that out as well. But we
Yeah.
have 1 minute left, so
Yay.
we.
I saw a question. They asked about what fish oil.
Oh,
Yeah, that was one question we missed.
what
It
about a
was,
good fish oil?
yeah,
Yes,
distilled molecularly, right? Molecularly distilled, right? That's
fish
one.
oil. Yeah,
Yeah.
omega-3. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you want to make sure it's coming from small fish so we don't get as much toxicity in the fish oil, but definitely really great for inflammation. Yeah. Okay, guys, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much, Rose, for coming on. And I hope you guys all enjoyed. And we're going to try to save this as an IGTV. I hope it works. So keep your fingers crossed. And
Please.
then you guys can watch it whenever you have time or you want to review something.
Yes.
So, all right.
Thank you too. I'm so thankful that we did this together, and have a good night, guys.
You
So
too.
much fun.
Have a good
Thank
night,
you.
guys. Bye.
Bye.